Well, good morning, Church at Woodbine. My name is Bill Ferrell. If I haven't met you, I've met a lot of you before. Glad to be with you today. Some of you know this, but my role, as far as Brentwood Baptist, is as Associate Executive Pastor here. And what that means is, there are four campuses, regional campuses of Brentwood in the Nashville area, and I sort of help with those campuses. When I say help, help coach up the staff, help watch the finances, help take care of the facilities, kind of whatever needs doing. I'm kind of that utility player, that sixth man off the bench in basketball that comes in and tries to help with things, right? Helps us be better. And so, in this time of transition, you hear that word a lot these days with Pastor Doug moving on to his next role. We're in a situation where I'm going to be with your staff every week. So I'll be here to help run their staff meeting, talk to them, supervise them, I guess, if you will, although I like to think of us as kind of co-workers. But, if somebody has to make a decision, I guess that's me, and I'll do that. But, along with that, each week, some things will remain unchanged, right? We're going to preach, we're going to teach the word every week. We have groups, obviously, that are going on. We're trying to serve together. We're trying to love one another. There'll be different people for at least the next 4 or 5 weeks. Preaching up here each week won't be me every week. Probably be me some weeks. Be some of our other staff, other people internally that I love to preach the Word of God and who have skill at that. And then eventually we intend to get an interim pastor, a person who's going to be the voice preaching the Word of God to you almost, on a consistent basis, and then eventually a new campus and teaching pastor, right? That's the end goal here. And so just know that in this process, hey, we're all in this together, guys. And so if you have any questions, though, you obviously have a great staff here. You can always reach out to me or anyone else on our team. We'd love to be just part of what you're doing and just know that you're cared for. We really love the things that are going on here and look forward to a bright future together. And today, we're continuing in a sermon series that we've been in. One of the things that I love about our church is that we kind of preach through series. I think it brings continuity to what we're talking about. We're in the end of kind of a vision series. And if you watch the video that just showed up about, kind of our vision and about disciples making disciples, you see the things that we're about, right? We're about gospel first and always. We're about giving. We're about groups. We're about gathering together. I even noticed today, and shame on me, I've never noticed this, when we had a welcome video, the very first thing we played when the service started, it has those same points listed in there. And I thought, wow, this actually has a purpose. It comes together here for me. Beautiful. And so today, we're talking about going what? Going in service. And that's what we're going to talk about here in just a minute. Let me pray for us, and then we'll get into the sermon today. God, thank you for the day. I pray that your Holy Spirit would be present with us in this place, that all we say and do is bringing glory to you today, God. That you'll help us to be inspired, to be followers of Christ, to live that out in our workplace, our neighborhoods, in our small groups, in our families, that we're sharing the love of Jesus with those we come in contact with. And so as we look into your word today, will you just give us understanding? You give us ears to hear what you have for us, regardless of what I say. Would you let people hear what they need to hear? And so I pray that as we do that your name would be lifted up, and we trust you with the results of it today. For we ask it in Christ's name. Amen. Some of you probably had an experience when you were in maybe junior high, maybe high school, where you wanted to learn how to play an instrument. Well, I feel like I'm hearing an instrument right now. There's an instrument maybe you played. Maybe you played the violin. Maybe you played the trumpet. Maybe you played the clarinet. Got into high school band. Any people been in high school band? Yeah, got a few high school band members still here. I myself played the trombone for about 2 years. I quit before I got into band because I didn't feel like I was good enough to be in band. But if you've ever been in band, or you've gone to hear a high school band, or you've gone to hear an orchestra, this is a broad range here. You'll notice that before they start playing their songs, there's this period where they're trying to get their instruments in tune. The violins over there, they're going along. The piano player is usually hitting an A because they all want to tune to A, and they make sure they're in tune. So the guy over there in the corner is clanging the cymbals, making sure they sound right. There's another guy, that's tuning up the clarinet, the oboe, the violin, the bassoon, whatever it is. And this makes a noise that is just awful. It's not good, you know. It sounds very screechy a lot of times. It's bringing a lot of discordant type notes. I'm not even sure that's an adjective, but I just made it one. And so the things come together, and it does not sound good. It's irritating to us when we hear it. But after a while, they get done with that, and then we start playing the actual music. And assuming everyone's tuned up and they're playing the notes they need to play and they start getting it together, we hear these sounds. Maybe you've heard this in an orchestra. Maybe you've gone to the symphony where the really good players play, right? And you hear these sounds that are just so melodic, so harmonious, that as you hear them, they just bring a beautiful feeling to your spirit. When you hear these music coming together, it just sounds beautiful. And the harmonious sounds calm our nerves. They help us to feel great about life, about music. It just moves us in some way. And the passage we're going to look about today, talks a lot about playing harmonious notes, about being together, and about how we all have a part to play in that sort of heavenly symphony, if you will, how we bring things together. So we're going to be in Ephesians chapter 4 this morning. If you want to turn there, Ephesians in the New Testament. Paul, when he wrote the book of Ephesians, he's in prison. When he writes the book, he writes these first 3 chapters and sort of talks, and I call them theological terms. Not so much do this, do that, but understand this, understand that, understand that Jews and Gentiles are one now. A lot of theological concepts. Then when he gets into chapter 4, 5, and 6, he starts getting into what I call the nuts and bolts of, okay, now that we know this stuff, what are we going to do with it? How are we going to live it out? What kind of difference does it make in our life? So we're getting in on the very first part of that part of the letter where he starts saying, hey, here's some things you need to do. So we're going to break this up into a few sections today. I decided that would be easier because we're going to read verses 1 to 16, but not all at once. So we're going to start by reading verses 1 to 6, and I'll tell you what. In honor of God's word, how about if we stand together, we'll read verses 1 to 6. I won't make you stand for the other parts, just 1 to 6. Here's what Paul says. He says, therefore, based on all this stuff he's just said in the first 3 chapters, therefore, I, the prisoner in the Lord, urge you to walk worthy of the calling you have received, with all humility and gentleness, with patience, bearing with one another in love, making every effort to keep the unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace. There's one body. There's one Spirit, just as you were called to what? One hope at your calling. One Lord, one faith, one baptism. One God and Father of all, who is above all and through all and in all. You can be seated. Said the word one a lot in there. I'll try to pay attention when somebody says something a lot. But I think that when we look at this overall passage today, there's a lot of words he uses, but there's one word that kind of sticks out above them all, and he's going to repeat it a few times later on. And that word is unity. Because what we're talking about today is unity. Say that with me. Unity. Yeah. So we're talking about unity, and Paul talks about unity in a few different spheres of life, if you will. The first one he talks about is unity in our walk. That's what these first 6 verses are about. I love that he starts it off by saying, I'm a prisoner in the Lord. I was in a meeting last week with some guys, and we were just kind of talking about this passage a little bit, and we were talking about how it's about unity, and one guy said, I can't get past the first couple words. I'm a prisoner of the Lord. I said, really? What are you thinking about that? The guy's name is Corey. He goes, I'm just saying, Bill, that when I'm a prisoner of the Lord, that's a lifetime sentence. And I'm like, that's awesome. A lifetime sentence, yeah. That's a sentence I want to be part of, right? A lifetime sentence of being a prisoner for the Lord, something that Paul didn't complain about. But he tells us what to do something. He urges us to walk worthy of this calling we receive. Sometimes we think that only ministers receive callings. Only certain people receive a calling in life. But Paul's writing this to the average, everyday person. He's writing this to you and to me, all on the same level. We've all received a calling. some sort of calling, something that Paul wants us to do. And he tells us to walk worthy of it. And the way we walk worthy of it is by walking in unity. What's that look like? He gives us a little clue here in that second verse. He says, walk with humility, walk with gentleness, with patience, bearing with one another in love. I think if we put all of those characteristics together, and you could put them in a cup and you could drink it, that would be what unity is about. Some of you may have even be thinking, oh yeah, I've heard of that cup of unity. That's actually a thing. It's celebrated once a year, another holiday. I don't know that many of you celebrate this. It's called Kwanzaa. It's not a religious holiday, but it's a holiday about remembrance, and where they make these cups, and they're kind of decorative, and then they share them with their family group, remembering what about their past, and they tell stories of that. But I think in the Christian realm, if we were to take this kind of cup and put these things together, we'd put those in it. Humility, gentleness, patience, bearing with one another, something that we could all share. If we drink from that cup, we're going to have some sort of unity. But in our walk, we're told to do that. And I think that when we talk about humility, complete humbleness, as Paul talks about, that is not something that's easy to get. Even in the early Roman Empire, when Paul would have talked about humility and written that to the Greeks, they would have found that offensive. They did not like to think about being humble, some degree of servitude. No, they weren't going to lean in on that at all. They were going to push back away from that. That was degrading. Nobody wanted to do that. And yet Paul's saying we should in fact do it. We should in fact be humble and put others first. I have found over time that there is a group of people. I don't like to stereotype groups of people, but I think there's a group of people that does this, drinks that cup of unity better than most others. You may have heard of this group. You may have even interacted with them. I like to simply call them grandparents. Yeah, grandparents. Yeah. Not necessarily grandparents, but you get it. People in their 60s, 70s, 80s. Why are they better at some of these things than me? Why are they better than you at it? It's because they've practiced it. They've practiced it over a long period of time. And when you get to be older, and trust me, I'm now getting to be older. I'm not a grandparent, but I could be. But I'm getting to the point where I thought, some of the little things that I used to argue over, that I used to want to fight about, whether it be in church or in work, they don't matter as much anymore. They don't seem quite as important as they once did. And so I wonder if that's why I think that grandparents are better at this, right? Or better at understanding some of the concepts, why we can learn from some of the older people that we're around, right? They have something to teach us, right? They teach us how to get along. They teach us how to bear with one another, how to live out humility and patience. Because sometimes I think that I just want to do what I want to do, my own way. But when I see how older people react, how they just maintain that calm spirit, it does something for me. Only about 10% of what we know are things that we've experienced. It means 90% of what we know, of what we do, comes from other sources. It comes from older people that we watch. It might come from other friends who have done something. They've traveled to far places. It might come from watching YouTube videos. That's how I learned everything about replacing dishwashers, which I've had to do. Yeah. So I learned all my repair techniques. So we learn things from other sources, right? But I think one of the primary sources in the church that we can learn from are those who have been there before us. They've seen things come and go. Yes, we can be scared. We can be upset about even our future here, about what's going to happen, who's our next pastor going to be. But you know what? Churches through the millennia have had to deal with those things. They've turned out. And this one will turn out all right as well. We have to have faith. And sometimes as we get older, we're able to lean in a little more and relax and trust that things are going to work out. Unity of the Spirit is not just some sort of congeniality that we have amongst a social group, but it's a unity that the Holy Spirit gives us. I don't know if you noticed what it said there, but it talked about how we have to make every effort to keep or to maintain this bond of unity. So the Holy Spirit gives it to us, but we have to maintain it. It's not something that we have to manufacture. It was already there. God gave it to us, but we are responsible to maintain it. And you've been in situations where it wasn't maintained. where it gets out of control. But I always tell my daughter, and we have this life group at our house now just about every week with people in their 20s that people come to. I tell them the same thing. You're only responsible for you. That sounds obvious, but when you think about it, if each one of us would decide, I'm going to bear with one another, I'm going to be patient, I'm going to be humble, everything would work out fine. We can be unified. So I always tell people, you're responsible for maintaining unity. I'm responsible for it, but I can only be responsible for my actions, how I react to things, what I say, what I do. Unity is everybody's responsibility. That's why I said we need to walk in unity. Second part, you can remain seated for this. We're going to read verses 7 to 13. We're going to talk about unity in our ministry. It says this, now grace was given to each one of us according to the measure of Christ's gift. For it says, when he ascended on high, he took the captives captive, he gave gifts to people. But what does he ascended mean? Except that he also descended to the lower parts of the earth. The one who descended is also the one who ascended far above the heavens to fill all things. He himself gave some to be apostles, some prophets, some evangelists, some pastors and teachers, to equip the saints for the work of ministry, to build up the body of Christ, until we all reach unity in the faith, in the knowledge of God's Son, growing into maturity with a stature measured by Christ's fullness. Boy, you can get lost in the weeds of this part here, this first part, unity in our ministry. When he ascended on high, he took captives captive, he gave gifts to people. Paul starts quoting here from a psalm, kind of a victory psalm they call it, Psalm 68, where he's quoting it, and I think why he does it, let's talk about what it means first. He ascended on high. He ascended except he descended. I think it simply means that Christ came to earth. He lived as a man. He was crucified. He died. He was put under the earth. He ascended back to heaven, right? I think that's what it's talking about. Whenever I'm telling people to read the Bible and to try to understand it, I always say when the common sense makes perfect sense, seek no other sense. In other words, you don't have to look for some ulterior motive, some mysterious reading that you can't understand. It seems to me that seems pretty understandable. And he tells people that when Jesus died, he won something. He won a victory. That victory, if you're a conquering king and you have a victory, there's something that comes along with that. You actually win something, It might be riches, it might be cattle, it might be fame, whatever it might be. But what happens here? Jesus turns around, takes the victory that he's got, and he gives it, right? He's giving things to people. He's giving gifts, it says. What's he giving? He's giving something so that we might, he might fill all things, it talked about here. Because you remember what we're talking about? Say it with me. Unity. Yeah, we're talking about, say it aloud, unity. Yeah, we're talking about unity. And so when you look at the unity here that he's bringing up, he says that we have gifts that we're given. We're given those gifts for a very specific reason. And sometimes we think of the gifts as, if I hand you a gift for Christmas or I hand you a gift for your birthday. But I like to think of these gifts more as something we become. You remember in the first part of the chapter, we were called with a calling. We're called to do some things. And I think as we do the things we're called to, we sort of become that. In other words, is there a gift of shepherding, a gift of teaching, a gift of evangelism? I guess so. But when I think of those as gifts, I normally think of somebody is evangelistic. Somebody is a teacher. Someone's a pastor or a shepherd. So I think we kind of become these gifts when we think about them. And I like to think about them in that way because I think it's more helpful to see them as people, not as something I have or don't have. Because each of us has a gift that we're given. It might not be one of these. There are other passages in the Bible which talk about some of these other gifts, hospitality, faith, belief, gift of serving. We have these other gifts that we're given, right? But again, once we lean in on those and we participate in the work of God, we become those. We become those things. Notice I said our ministry, because I feel like sometimes we think that ministry is just for ministers. But ministry is really for members. It's for everybody. That's why we talk about unity in our ministry and about going together. I think I'm going to call this a worldly model of the church that sometimes we ascribe to is there's this sort of pastor up here. He's the chief executive officer. If you think of it as a business, the CEO. We've got these ministers. They're like your senior executives, I guess. And then everybody else is like a client, a consumer, that kind of thing. That's messed up, guys. That's not right. The Bible never calls us to that kind of a model, right? What it calls us to is a model where we're all co-laborers. We're all workers together. Yes, there are different roles that we all hold, but they all are important. They all make a difference. And so when we start looking at what is our part, what is it that we need to do, we need to realize that we're supposed to be equipped. You notice there in verse 12 or verse 11 going into 12, we're to equip the saints for the work of ministry. And when we do that, boy, that's some really good benefits. I think he lists 4 or 5 here. Builds up the body of Christ. We reach unity in the faith of knowledge of God's Son. We grow in maturity. We're measured by Christ's fullness. A lot of good things that happen when we do that. But we're each responsible to be equipped. Some of us are responsible for equipping people. To what? So we all do the work of service together. I love when Paul was talking to Timothy early on. Timothy was a young man. He led Timothy to faith in Jesus. He trains Timothy up, but then he always refers to him as not, oh, my young son, just, hey, my co-worker, my co-laborer, my friend. Age difference, status doesn't make any difference. We all lock arms and work at the same level, shoulder to shoulder, right? I think that when we see our ministers, our staff as people that we work alongside versus people over us, I just think that's more healthy. I think that's a better model. The church isn't a building we come into. You hear this all the time. The church is the people. We all have roles to play in that body. That equip word is pretty interesting. Sometimes when we're trying to figure out what things in the Bible mean, we will look at other sources of literature outside the Bible just to see how that word's used, right? So the New Testament, most of it was written in Greek, and we can look at that word equip, and outside the Bible, it kind of had a couple distinct meanings, ways it was used. It was used to, as a doctor would set 2 bones together that had been broken, to equip them, to kind of knit them back together. It was talked about in relation to political reconciliation. That would be a lot to talk about, so I'm going to leave that aside. Yeah, but you can see how it's about putting things right, about setting things up for a better tomorrow, a better future. That's what Paul is spelling out here, that pastors should use their gifts to help equip people, and then we should be working alongside each other. Even Jesus, you look at the Gospel of Mark, said he didn't even come to be served, but to serve, to give his life as a ransom for many. I think that applies here. But there's another part to this. The last few verses of chapter 4, 14 to 16, right in the middle here of this section, he says this. Then, here's the result of doing these things. Then we're no longer going to be little children, tossed by the waves, blown around by every wind of teaching, by human cunning and cleverness and the techniques of deceit, but speaking the truth in love, let us grow in every way into him who is the head, Christ. From him the whole body is fitted and knit together by every supporting ligament. It promotes the growth of the body for building itself up in love by the proper working of each individual part. So I think this section, again, it's about unity, but it's about unity in our growth. We've had unity in our walk, unity in our ministry, and now unity in our growth. Because again, while it's everyone's responsibility to walk their way in light of the word that we've seen and to grow, here we can see that there are 2 sort of conditions for growth, I guess I would use that word, and those are both truth and love. Sometimes we separate those 2, but unity at the expense of truth, or truthful speech at the expense of unity, that costs too much. That's too expensive. We need to put truth and love together. Sometimes that can be really hard, but we need to speak truth in a way that love is maintained. I usually say, we speak truth in the sphere of love, right? And sometimes we say something that is maybe truthful, but not loving. Or we say something that's loving, but it's not truthful, right? And somehow we have to marry those two. I find that people tend to lean one way or the other. I won't tell you which way I lean, but it's kind of toward truth, right? And because I value the truth so much, so I try to temper that. And as I've gotten older, see, I've taken the lesson. I'm trying to get better at that. But we need to put both of those things together. They're super important, right? Because we're trying to maintain what? Unity. And if we're going to maintain unity, we have to put the two together. It's what we got to do if we're going to maintain them. I think there's a close connection here, between simplicity and maybe being naive. Paul talks a little bit about how people can be tossed around by waves, blown by every wind of teaching, how they're, but we're not supposed to be like little children. We're supposed to be unified in our growth. There are so many new things that can come along in life. I remember when I was a kid, there was a new toy that came out. You may have heard of it. It was called the Hot Wheels. Yeah, there's little cars. Who didn't like them, right? We played with those for hours. They were great. And then not too long after that, another toy came out. It's called the Nerf ball. And it came with a little basketball goal, and you'd hang it on the back of your door, and you could throw that Nerf ball all over the inside of the house because it was like throwing a sponge. It didn't really break anything, and you weren't going to get in trouble doing it. And after that, there was something that else came out. It was the yo-yo. I had this one. It was the Duncan butterfly yo-yo. I don't know if you've ever seen the butterfly yo-yo. You can do all kinds of tricks with that thing. Thing is awesome. I don't even know if they still make it, but they should because it was an excellent toy. After that came something else. Every kid had one of these that I knew. It's called the mood ring. You put on the mood ring, and when you got warm, it changed colors, and it could tell what kind of mood you were in. You were happy, you were sad, you were angry, and every kid had to have the mood ring. So see, there were these fads. They would come along one after the other after the other. In Christianity, sometimes these fads come along too. And one of the reasons that we need to grow to be mature Christians is so we're not carried away by ones that are not real. You've probably heard of one that's around. It's not that recent, but it's fairly new. This kind of new agey thinking, this new age kind of movement that comes around. That's been around. That's based in stuff that came out in the first century. Gnosticism was something that said we should just value knowledge. And they've taken some of those concepts and said, okay, I can kind of be better just through positive thinking. I can be better through different philosophies that I have. It's anti-Christianity, guys. And when you start leaning in on other philosophies but don't know what the Word of God says, you can be led astray. You can be tricked. You can be tossed around by all kinds of winds of cunning and change. For every sin in the world, there is somebody who's going to write a moral justification for it. Right? You think about it. There are people today, well-respected people, who will write these moral justifications for abortion. There were people in Germany and Russia many years ago who wrote, all theologians, moral justifications for everything that Hitler and Stalin were doing, right? And again, people can be drawn away by stuff that is so ungodly because they're not growing. They're not growing in unity. They're not growing to a mature faith. I always tell people, if you want to know and understand the Bible, just simply read it. It's the number one way you can know the Bible. Just by reading what it says for yourself. It's not confusing. I already told you. If it has a common sense, understand it in that way. Sometimes we need to be in a group. Why do we get in groups? I think there's a couple of reasons. Fellowship and kind of the camaraderie, but also to be able to talk about ideas freely, to understand them, to try to grow in our faith, to mature. It's one of the primary reasons that we have groups as one of the top things that we do. There's a statistic out there in the church world. I heard somebody talking about it again last week, and it says that if you are in a group, people that are in a group, let's not say you, let's say anybody, people that are in groups, if we look at 5 years from now, people that are in groups 4 out of 5 of them will still be here, will still be in church in 5 years. But people that are not in groups, only 1 in 5 will remain in a church. I think there's a reason for that, because it's about learning, it's about maturing in your faith, it's about having connectedness with other believers because we grow in this unity that we have together. It's hard to do that alone. Some of you are watching online probably right now, and I would say, hey, get here in person as much as you can. Get in a group. be in community with people. It's super important to our faith. I don't know if you've ever played an instrument that you don't play anymore, but I think there's a time when you should consider getting back in the band, playing it again. It can make a difference, metaphorically speaking, to get back involved in what you may have done in the past but are not doing now. I remember when I was going to a church in Detroit many years ago. I've not always been in the ministry. I don't know if you can sense that, but I wasn't always in the ministry. And I was going to a big church. My wife and I hadn't been married but a couple of years, and there was a guy that was playing in this church, had an orchestra, and the guy was playing the drums. And I played the drums a bit in high school, and I thought, this could be fun to get into again. I had him start giving me some lessons in the drums, and in the meantime, he said, why don't you come to the orchestra? I want to show you something. And he had these two big drums called timpani, right? And he said, I want you to play these. And I'm like, I don't know how to play those. And he said, Bill, it's pretty simple. He got me a little piece of music, and he said, there's all these lines, 5 lines, in a staff of music, and there's little notes. And some of those notes are on lines. Some are between lines. He said, Bill, if a note is on the line, hit this drum. If it's between the lines, hit this one. I was like, really? It sounds pretty easy. I was like, okay. So I started doing that. It got a little more complicated as time went on, but that started me on a path to start playing music. And I just think of all the benefits that has led in my lifetime down the road. And I would say to you, and when you relate that to the church world, boy, you want to grow in your faith, get involved in something. Just get involved in a group. Live life out with other people. I'm going to invite the worship team to come back up here as we kind of wrap up here in just a minute. But there are 3 sort of concluding thoughts I want to give you today. Steps that you can take. Maybe it's 1, maybe it's all 3. Whatever you can decide to do with this passage. The first one I would say you should commit to or consider is to bearing with one another. Some of us need to simply sit and try to truth and love, bear with one another. That was in the very first part about our walk. Because I find that if we can't get that right, it's hard to progress into a faith, into a life of following Jesus if we're not bearing with one another. Some of you might need to commit to that today. Second thing is, some of you may need to commit to equipping or being equipped, right? We make this so easy for you at the church at Woodbine. It's so easy that I'm going to let Johnny explain it. No, I'm going to push you to Johnny, and what I mean by that is we have a survey we do here. We call it Place. We just revamped it, so it's online. It's very easy. And it does 2 primary things. It's built on helping you discover your spiritual gifts and your personality type. And then we marry those together and just suggest a few areas where you might serve. And the truth is, if you serve in an area where you're gifted and where your personality syncs up, guys, it won't even seem like work. You'll be like, oh, why haven't I been playing this timpani for years? It's beautiful. You will love what you're doing. I would say if you want to be involved in that, hey, get with Johnny after the service. Email him this week. You can do the survey online. We pair you up with a coach. We give you some ideas for how you can use your gifts. So commit to equipping. What I mean by that is either equipping others or being equipped, right, as we do the work of the Lord together. And finally, commit to growing. We just talked about it. But it takes work. We have to commit to being together, to growing, to reading our Bible, right? We don't have to make it a chore. Some of you have bought the chronological Bible. You're going to read through the Bible next year. If you haven't bought one, you still have one more chance today, the back table after the service. But commit to growing. Commit to something this week that's going to make a difference as we walk into the future together and see what that holds for us. After the service, you might want to find another next step. You might want to learn about joining the church. You might want to find about accepting the Lord as Savior. You might want to figure out about baptism. You might want to talk to Johnny about Place. There'll be some people right over here in our Next Steps area. You can join them over there. But let's pray right now. God, thank you for your word. Made it so practical what Paul wrote to us today. A lifetime sentence of being your prisoner. What's a better place we could be? I pray if people here today don't know what that's like, that they would come down and talk about it. They haven't served, they haven't been equipped. Lord, let them take a step of faith. Maybe that's scary. Maybe that they wonder, what would that be like for me to serve in something that I'm interested in? Pray they would find out. Help us not to fear walking with you, Lord, but to enjoy the journey of life as we bond together. in love, to make a difference and to be unified. That's what you've called us to today. So we ask it in Christ's name. Amen.